Heyo!
Hey
Happy Monday,
everyone.
guys.
Happy Monday.
It
That's my
feels
Monday
weird now
dance.
that we're not on thing, right?
Yes.
Season 6 has come to an end. If any of you guys check out our live Wednesday episodes, definitely go make sure you guys go check out the last one. It was a really good one.
Oh, so good. So good. If you're broke, how can you change that? Lots of goodies there. Lots and lots
Facts.
of goodies.
Facts. All right, so what we doing today, Jay?
Well, I'm really excited. If this is the first time that you're with us for one of our Monday rundowns, this is where Winston and I get to talk about all the other things that we want to talk about that could possibly affect our business, but more importantly, could probably impact some area of our life, which
Mm-hmm.
means it could probably impact your life as well, right? And
Yeah.
so I love Mondays for that reason. So that way we can talk about different things. This Monday is no different. We have a really good uh, some really good big thinkers we're
Yeah.
going to hear
Yeah.
from and help us with the idea of today's topic.
Yeah, and before we dive into it, guys, if you are new to the channel, you may not know, Janelle and I have put out books, but Janelle just recently put out a book. And I think well, actually, I don't know because I haven't seen the video, but I know what the topic is today may fall in line with some of the work that I know that she's doing and speaking on currently. So let's dive into the question,
Yep.
and then if you guys haven't, we'll definitely throw up a description in our description, link to her book so that you guys can get a copy of that. All right, so guys, today's question is, or topic,
Can we redefine trauma? Hmm.
I'm gonna let
Great
Janelle take the lead on this.
question.
I have
Well,
opinions, but I'm gonna let the expert, I'm gonna let the budding expert take her saying, have her saying this.
I appreciate that. So I think redefining trauma. We've listened to a couple of people who I think have talked about what trauma is and where it
Mm-hmm.
comes from. And for me, the redefinition of trauma is not necessarily the psychological or psychiatric definition of it. I think that will remain the same. For me, it's more of a redefinition of what we in society identify as trauma. And I think we don't acknowledge it really is really for me what it is. For me, I would like to redefine how we view it in our cultural norms. So
Mm-hmm.
that way we could better I think so we could heal ourselves and we can help each other heal. I think that would be what for me that's what's most important. And to be honest, most of our trauma comes from childhood. So that I don't think that part of the definition will be changed. That's like a thing that I think will remain. Not because our parents wanted to traumatize us. It's just because of how we possibly internalize some of the messages that we received when we were younger. And so
Okay.
how we internalized it and what we believe that the message to mean when we heard something or when a particular act took place. Again, I'm not so sure that that definition will change, but I would like to redefine it how we see it in culture, which is it's kind of like taboo. We don't talk about it. Let's get past our traumas. Let's move on with life. Like, don't think
Mm-hmm.
about it. That kind of a thing. I'd like to redefine that. And maybe that doesn't answer the question straight out, but that's kind of my thoughts on it right now.
Well, I think it does, and I agree with you because as two people who have been through programs designed around this specific topic, I know we've both taken part in Landmark, and I remember and I had done therapy before Landmark, and for me, guys, I was sexually assaulted when I was a teen or preteen. And it had gone on for years. And I defined myself by this trauma for a period of time until I sought therapy through the suggestion of a friend. And then again, when I mentioned Landmark, and then now in Landmark, I think they took a very hands-on approach to this, exactly what this question is. And I was asked to get up in front of people and to share what happened to me. And it definitely was a progression, but in that moment, I was offered an opportunity to do exactly what the question says. I was offered an opportunity to redefine what happened to me. And so it wasn't that I was someone that was sexually, or actually, I was still the person who was sexually assaulted, but it didn't have to shape who I was moving forward. And so I definitely agree with you, Janelle. I think it is a question of, yes, that thing happened to you, but it doesn't have to mean this negative thing that I think it can mean. It can be something that propels you to help others, or it can be definitely be used in a positive way. And so for me, I know that now whenever I speak to people, if it ever comes up in a conversation, someone says, oh, if you've ever had this happen to me, I feel so much more confident to say, yes, this thing happened, and here are the things I learned from that. The person that did this to me was also hurting. All the person that hurt you may also be suffering from things that, this is not to make light of what happened, but that person can also be suffering from some type of trauma themselves. And so I say, I definitely think, yes, we can redefine trauma, not get rid of it maybe, but just change how we perceive what is taking place. And I know, again, it's not just us today. I think today, if it's not Big Think, we have, was it Be Well that we have on deck that we're going to jump into?
Big Think.
Oh, it is Big Thing. Okay, great. Sorry. So let's jump into today's video and hear what they have to say on the subject of trauma.
Awesome.
We have a lot of words for unpleasant experiences. We can call it negative mood. We can call it stress. We can call it trauma. All of these words have something in common. And what they have in common is they all refer to events that are really metabolically expensive. Trauma, it's an experience that is constructed like any other experience is constructed. That doesn't trivialize it. That just shows you the real power of predictions in the economy of your everyday life. What's happening when an adverse experience becomes traumatic, the brain is weighting that experience very heavily in its future predictions. From a metabolic standpoint, it's always better to predict and correct than it is to react. The traumatic event is re-experienced again and again and again, which only strengthens those connections and only makes those predictions more likely in the future. And the reason why a brain would do this is to avoid missing a threat. The brain is building a model of the world as a threatening place, and it's constantly preparing the body to deal with that over and over and over again. And then the brain continues to make those predictions, continues to model that world, and hasn't updated itself. This idea that trauma lives in your body, or that your body somehow carries with it the mark of trauma. It's based on this idea that you have this animalistic part of a brain, and that this somehow leads to adversity, trauma, marking your body, and you feeling the consequences of the trauma in your body. And then treatments are designed to remove those marks from your body. And it turns out that many of the treatments that I'm familiar with actually do show really good evidence of working, but they don't work because you have a cockroach brain or a lizard brain, and they don't work because trauma is marking your body. Your body does not keep the score. Your brain keeps the score, and your body is the scorecard. Your experience of your body is actually constructed and experienced in your brain. Your body isn't what needs to be healed. What needs to change is your brain's predictions, because those predictions are what construct your experience of your body in the world. And you have to find a way to break that cycle. You are not trapped in traumatic predictions. It is possible to change with a number of different methods. The kind of dominant treatments for trauma, like yoga, the use of psychedelics, and sometimes dance therapy, or something embodied like theater, those are all really good ways of altering your predictions. Partly what you're doing is creating new experiences for yourself to flesh out and make more flexible your brain's ability to predict differently in the future. You could describe the brain as a scientist, a scientist with a hypothesis. That's what a set of predictions are. It's a belief, a guess about what sensations are about to happen and why they happen. That's where those emotions come from. And so, like a good scientist, you could test and see which hypothesis is the correct one. That is something that, when you're recovering from trauma, it's really important to do, because the arousal that you might feel might have something to do with your uncertainty about which category is the right one. And the only way to figure that out is to get more information. Some people might be concerned that what I'm saying is that trauma is in your head. And I am saying trauma is in your head, but everything is in your head. Every beautiful sunset that you see, every hug that you feel, every delicious drink that you have, everything is in your head. It is possible to recover from trauma. That doesn't mean that traumatic memories won't rear their ugly heads at some time in the future, but they don't have to dominate your brain's predictions. And the fact that you have some control over how to manage that content is a gift.
That was definitely a quick one. Oh, man. Short and sweet.
But really profound. I've been doing a lot of healing work recently. For those of you who don't know, I do anti-racism work within the field of genetic counseling, and we're looking actually to expand that to other healthcare professionals. But the work that I do there, we talk about like the traumatic experiences that potentially someone of color may experience when racism occurs, and that it could be traumatic, right? And then how the body keeps a score, what that feels like in order to, and sometimes, well, right now my healing has been focused on the idea of rest, which I think also in this culture, there's like a negative feeling about that. It's like, no, don't rest. Rest when you're dead. Like that's when you can rest.
Yeah, especially in our entrepreneurship kind of a thing.
Yes, yes. And I would really, really like to change that. Anyway, in saying all of that, there was this, it was very clear that it's important to acknowledge how, like, what is going on in your body. It was really about just an awareness of like, what is happening in your body? Do you feel a tightening in your chest? Is your face getting hot? Do you feel tingly in your fingers? Like those, just like really being aware of what's going on in your body, and then allowing and putting your physical self in a space where you can rest, where you feel safe, you don't feel like you're being attacked or something is gonna, like, right? So it's so interesting to hear this, because I get what she's saying. Like it's the scorecard. Even though we may have heard that the body keeps the score, it is kind of like the scorecard. It's like it's still holding on to some of those things, because you literally feel those things when you remember the traumatic experience, or when something triggers that thought process of the traumatic experience. Again, because your brain is just trying to protect you and kind of create easy ways to make a decision, right, in order to protect you from whatever you think is going to happen. So I get it. Like the brain is trying to do that, but ultimately, like it's felt in your body. And so sometimes when you're triggered, sometimes the first thing that you notice, if you're very aware, you actually might notice something in your body first before you can actually catch up with what your brain is doing. So for me, I like that. It's a new method for me to kind of just identify that something is going on. And I think for a really long time, I would brush those physical feelings I was having aside, or push them down, and try not to like acknowledge what's happening, and that this could just be a sign of like, oh, okay, I'm feeling this way because this is what happened to me in the past. But that doesn't mean, like, now that I'm acknowledging what my body's feeling, I can look at my thoughts and say like, okay, that happened in the past. And so it's reminding, what's happening right now is reminding me of that past situation. But that doesn't mean what happened in the past is what's going to happen now. And then how can I like calm my body down now? Because like that doesn't mean that I'm in that place. Like I'm present, I'm here, I'm still safe. Right? Does this make sense? What I'm
No,
saying?
it does. And I think it's also, I think what a lot of this also, or maybe a lot, but what this also may take into consideration is the fact that at times we probably have to step out of what social norms look like, and consider yourself more. So an example is, I was listening to an Abraham Hicks audio, and she talks about why it seems odd that if you're in a conversation that's making you feel uncomfortable, that you can't just walk away, excuse yourself to the bathroom, find whatever reason you want to, and then just excuse yourself. And maybe an easier example would be, I remember when I had clients and they would try to describe what it was like to be at business dinner. So I'm training a client, I'm trying to get them to maybe not drink as much, or it's just something that coincides with goals that they've set up for themselves. But then they would explain to me that it was difficult for them, these are grown adults, to sit at a table with other adults and say, I can't have a drink of wine tonight because I care about myself and it doesn't align with goals that I have. And how one of my clients would tell the waiter, which was actually really clever, but it made me think, again, this is an adult. He had to tell the waiter to bring him cranberry juice instead of red wine before the dinner, but at the table he would order red wine. And it was me going, oh, are we being bullied at this? But he isn't being bullied. It's not like someone saying, hey, you have to have wine, but he's created this, again, social pressure, or there's this social pressure that says you should have wine at this dinner. And he couldn't just say, hey, I'm on a diet, hey, I'm just not having a wine tonight, without someone commenting, oh, come on, it's just a glass of wine. And it was so funny because I said to him, now that there are laws against smoking in restaurants, it'd be weird if someone saw you do that and they'd be so put off by that. It's easier for you to say that because there's a law. Again, society has deemed it, where we live, that smoking in restaurants is not cool. It's actually against the law to do that. But no one does that when it comes to overeating or drinking and these other things that are somewhat socially acceptable, unless you're told or categorized as having an addiction to these things. Then it becomes perfectly fine to go, oh, you shouldn't have that extra donut. You shouldn't have that third or fourth glass of wine. And I think it's interesting that trauma isn't treated the same way. Hey, I may or may not know this thing about you that happened in your past, but you seem afraid, or whatever I don't know the feeling you were saying you were expressing earlier, Janelle. But it'd be interesting if you just had an opportunity to go, oh man, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed right now. I'm gonna go to the bathroom and cool off. I'm gonna step out for some air. I just wonder what the world would look like when we get to a place where, just like we can call out some of these other things that are not healthy for us, that you can go, man, I'm feeling really triggered right now. I'm gonna go step out and get some air, change the scenery. Oh, the way you're speaking to me right now is bringing back some memories I had of a past situation that I just don't really want to handle right now. So I'm gonna revisit this in a little bit. And someone on the other side just being going, oh wow, I completely understand where you're coming from. Just like if I said I'm an alcoholic, I can't have a drink tonight, I think many people would be very comfortable to go, I completely get where you're coming from. Even though they aren't alcoholics themselves, they just have enough information around that type of trauma that I think it's easier for them to be considerate of how you're dealing with it by going through the steps that you're going through. So I agree with what you're saying. And I understood what you were getting. I believe I understand what you were getting across.
I think what you're saying is really, I was just thinking, like, imagine that, like, imagine a world where you could just say that, like, I'm triggered right now. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. But it's reminding me of a traumatic experience, whatever the conversation is, whatever it is. I just like got reminded of a traumatic experience, and I just need to like go outside for a little bit. Yeah, I'll be right back. And nothing to do with you, you know.
Well, again, and here's where, sorry to cut you off, but here's where I think, again, it's because I have had situations where that happens. And again, it's like, if you're we're talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, you're in a pretty big business meeting. So the idea would be, it would be weird if you ask for something for yourself, because that's not socially acceptable. But then who you are in that moment isn't serving everyone else. Like what you just described, that situation, that couldn't have been the best version of Janelle who was feeling that way. So whatever you're doing, and think about if workplaces, and I think the pandemic honestly has brought, as detrimental as a lot of industries have been hit and all that, I also think there's been a lot of positives in the sense that we are aware of what it looks like. Oh, we're more aware now of when people talk about, I need personal time for emotional things I'm dealing with. You know what I mean? Like, and I think there's at least the conversation, I personally think, has become just a lot more, or it's being had. I think the conversation is being had more now than, I can definitely tell you the last time we had a financial crisis, I don't think and people were jumping out of windows because of how bad things financially were. I don't know if how many people really remember when the last time we had a housing bubble and that burst. People literally jumped out of windows to commit suicide because of the fact that they lost money. Like that's a crazy thing to consider. Like how that type of trauma, you know, that's the solution that they thought would make the most sense in that moment. And that can obviously be the best way, right, of handling that. And so I am personally appreciative of the fact that these type of conversations are had, content like this is out there that discuss these things, because like we said, the Monday rundowns are all about addressing things that I don't think maybe always are at the forefront. You know, a lot of it is, set the right goals, and if you have the right goals, you'll push through. And I just don't think that there is that. And we also have to talk about, well, what are the things that you're telling yourself that are keeping you from that goal? And I think that's where this conversation starts. Because it's not that everyone doesn't want to be successful. It can't be that. No one wants to, you know what I mean? Like, it can't be we want to be broke. Like that, or that there's this magic group of people controlling the world, and therefore, like, that also can't be it. Or the only thing. There has to be, I'm doing this to myself, and I need help to understand why. And I think these conversations bring us closer to that solution or that resolution.
Well, I agree with you 100%. And I would also like to say that I think I'm starting to recognize that the reason why people say things, like the reason why people blame others, like, oh, it's because of this, why I'm like not successful. That person is holding me back. This person is doing this.
Yeah.
I think it's a protective thing for themselves, because if they really owned up to what the fact that they're not doing and putting in place, that would be too painful to face, right? So it's easier to just like blame other people. But to your point, it's because we haven't normalized.
Yeah, we haven't talked about
thinking. It's so interesting. I just had, so for those of you that are watching who participated this past Thursday, I had a masterclass. It was free, and it was the 4 steps for a 6-figure mindset before the holiday season. And this is actually some of the stuff that we talked about.
Nice.
You know, like the things that you were told when you were little, like even like money is dirty. And if you've been told that money is dirty, and then like now as a kid, right, like you were told that several times as you were a kid, totally internalize that. Now as an adult, every time you get money, you find that you're spending it. And you're getting, you subconsciously are getting rid of it because money's dirty, and who wants to be dirty? Like nobody wants to be dirty. So you're getting rid of it. Or another one is, you know, with more money, there's more problems.
Oh, there's a whole rap song.
I mean, right?
Pretty popular New York artist.
Right. But like, if that's the way that you're thinking, oh, well, you know, more money, more problems, then of course you're going to do things,
not get more
even
money.
Little things to not get more money, because you think it's going to like add more problems, add more responsibility, add more headache, add more challenges, whatever, if that's what you're thinking, right? And to your point, if you don't address those things, what was happening to you when you were a kid that gave you those messages? And sometimes it was an outright, that's just what they said, or it was just a song I listened to, right, and it got internalized. Or my parents used to say this all the time, right? Like, and we're talking about money because, you know, on Wednesdays we talk about, you know, business and entrepreneurship, but I mean, this goes for everything. What if it's, and this is where my book comes in, right, with the traumatic things that you hear when you're little, when, you know, and how you internalize them. But imagine it affects your relationships, right? If when you're little, you think that you're unlovable, you're ugly, you'll never amount to anything, right? Like, now you're in a relationship and you're thinking, I'm ugly, this person, or I'm not lovable. Like, this person doesn't love me. This isn't real. So you'll do things to self-sabotage the relationship, right? So like this traumatic, the things that happen in your brain, she didn't talk about like when the trauma happens. I think a lot of it happens, a lot of psychological trauma, I believe, happens when you're a child. And then how we show up as adults is like just us trying to like live out our traumas. I saw it was something on social media. So every once in a while, social media will provide some really valuable stuff. And
plus
it was
our content.
exactly. Thank you for that. But it said, when you marry someone, you're marrying their traumas.
Facts.
And I was like, I remember I read it and I said the same thing that you said, like, say that, facts, like 100%, that is what it is. And I feel like very recently I've been like very aware of that. Like, oh my God, I'm having a traumatic response. Or, oh my God, this person's having a traumatic response. It has nothing to do with me. Or when it was me, it had nothing to do with them. And recognizing like, oh, okay, but we have a place and a space where now we can like transforming that and like recognizing we're not in the same place and space, and maybe it doesn't mean the same thing, and how can we heal? And I think that's very powerful. But I don't think if I didn't recognize that this is what's happening, I think I'd be in a different place and space.
Man, that's actually, so funny. And this is because I agree with what you're saying, and it made me. We watched a movie last night, Inside Out. It's a Disney movie.
Oh yeah.
Where and I've seen it before, but it's just one of those. One thing I'll say is these kids movies today touch on some subjects that, not that I wish we had it, but it's just I'm thankful that they have those now. And I remember just like the character in that, if you haven't seen it yet, it kind of shares with you how these core memories kind of get put in place. And how they set up these in the movie. She had these like islands, and they kind of set up her personality. And just what you said right there made me think of that. Just that idea of when we're kids, there are these things that happen to us, and they can define, or no, they play a role certainly in defining who you are. But I think the powerful thing that we can recognize is that you only have today, right now, like whenever this is. And you have the opportunity, if you are still here, to change how something that could be happened to you plays a role in the life that you live moving forward. Because yes, it did happen. We are definitely here to acknowledge that, but it doesn't have to continue. If it's a negative thing in your life, it doesn't have to continue being that. And there's certainly tools out there that you can look into finding to help move you into a space. I know of a great book that you can get to help discuss shame, if that's an area, if you're aware it's shame. And even if you're not, because it could be, you should definitely still go out and get the book because it could be shame, because it's actually a lot of the underlying things that are affecting us in the terms of trauma, I think lend themselves to that title, if that's the thing, or fall under that subcategory of shame. So
and he's referring to my book, just so it's clear. My book is called I Slept with a Married Man. Am I Still a Good Person? We'll put the link down below. I would love if anybody reads it, I would love for you to share your comments as well. I love having dialogue around these exact conversations.
And hit up Janelle on social media. That's the other place we want you to go. That's the other good thing about social media.
Yes.
The stuff Janelle talked about in our Instagram, our Instagram and TikTok and anywhere else that we are. So definitely make sure you go check us out there.
Oh man, this was amazing. So we can't wait to see you guys next Monday. And as always, remember, you deserve the good life. Say that.
Say that. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.